The horror, the horror, the horror. This is a Blitz edition of Anson and Paul's Big Movie Podcast. My name is Paul Morgan.
My name is Anson Chan.
And as I mentioned before, the horror, the horror. We're once again back with Apocalypse Now. We didn't quite finish our discussion on it the last time. I had to go. I had obligations regarding cooking dinner with my family.
How did that vegetable and rice turn out?
It turned out all right, and sautéed some vegetables in oil, garlic, and some other stuff that that is proprietary. And now we're back to finish our discussion on Apocalypse Now. Now, what we didn't get to last time was the issues we had with the movie. I kind of voiced my opinion that this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I don't really have a lot of issues with it. So with that, Anson, I believe you wrote down some issues you had with this movie so that we could get a discussion going. Because I am going to ardently defend just about every decision in this movie.
Sure, it's not like I have a whole lot of points, but it's that these points I think pretty much sum up a lot of different issues with the movie. And they're very basic, but let's start off with the length of the movie. My God, this is a extraordinary long feeling movie. I feel like so much could have been cut. So much of it was filler. So much just Hollywood masturbation.
It's almost as if the Vietnam War was a conflict that should have been cut, that so much of it was filler, that a lot of the offensives were ill-fated, that...
Don't give me that guff. Pish posh.
I'm fucking with you.
Yeah, I was going to say. Give me a break.
I'm not that big of an asshole.
I was like, I would love to hear you try to argue that.
No.
Paul,
I wouldn't dare.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't dare.
It's like, this is you on your high horse time. Let's
yeah.
see. Now, this movie felt so fucking long. And you're telling me that, like, this was originally like a 5-hour cut movie?
I think the version they premiered at the Cannes Film Festival was 5 hours and 15 minutes. And then it was never the same cut released on any of its releases after that.
Were people like openly booing it was so long?
No, I'm pretty sure this movie has gotten universal acclaim. Let me just check something like Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb. It has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes and 8.5 on IMDb. Let's see Metacritic. On Metacritic, it has a 90%, 4.5 stars out of 5. So, I mean, like I said, it might feel long, but it has enjoyed almost universal acclaim. I found some people in the True Film subreddit on Reddit who really didn't like certain parts of it. Like, I remember you mentioning in the last episode that we tried to do that you were kind of fascinated by the bit with the French plantation, those like homesteader type French people. A lot of people really fucking hated that part because they were talking about how like they really built up the tension going up to the bridge and how the bridge was going to be kind of one of the peaks of the movie, and then they get past it and it's just these French, essentially like aristocrats of the area living way, way, way past the resources and means of anyone else in the area. So I think that was kind of interesting. People did tend to have the opposite view of you on that one.
After the bridge, are you talking about like after
when they go to the little French plantation?
No, I know, but like before that, is that when they find like the downed Playboy bunny camp thing with like all those like kids with no leaders, and they're just like mortaring the Viet Cong without looking because they have like this weird fucking like far out man like sense of the jungle?
I don't remember if it was before or after that.
Pretty sure it was after.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think the French thing might have happened right before the boat gets attacked by the natives, and then right after that is when they find Kurtz, I think.
Yeah, and then we spend about the last 45 minutes with Kurtz.
I would argue that it's entirely necessary or more necessary to the plot than all the other bullshit that happens. That like, how do you describe the just completely bizarre acid-induced feeling that you get from this movie?
I would say, and if my parents or anyone from any sort of employer is listening, please do not judge me. I would say this movie feels like an acid trip. It feels like you're on acid. There are moments of extreme exuberance followed by extreme terror at what is happening, followed by this weird feeling in your stomach that something's off, and sometimes it's lasting way too long and you can't get out of it. It's, and anyone who's done acid will tell you, that's kind of a little bit of a mirror of life. This movie does feel like an acid trip, but only the uncomfortable parts of.
I think like 90% of it is like uncomfortable acid trip then, because it has no cohesiveness. So much of it is just like inconsistent. If you're trying to say it's like an acid trip, fine, but it's not fun for me to watch. The first time I watched this movie years ago, I just could not wait for it to be over, and I was just getting more and more pissed off that I was watching this bullshit thing that didn't make any fucking sense. Now that I'm older, I still feel the same way, and I'm like, I was trying to understand maybe that whatever the fuck he was trying to go for makes sense in the book, but you're telling me most of this was not actually taken from the book. It was like his own weird, like, drug-addled direction style that caused this fucking, what I consider a fucking huge mess.
Okay.
Horrible to watch experience.
When you say all of that, it makes sense that you might not enjoy this movie or that you might think parts of it are long-winded. But I guess what I have trouble with is I have trouble with the tone you're taking that implies that you found nothing redeeming about this movie. Because
Remember
me,
I told you last time?
Yeah.
I do like a lot of things about this movie. I hate the overall experience, and that's the problem. The overall experience is just so fucking awful.
Yeah. And I guess the tone of when you mention these things as being so awful, I'm like, I keep thinking to myself, but you couldn't find anything about that thing that you disliked that might have lent itself to the character of Willard or the character of Kurtz or the atmosphere of the movie. And I guess a lot of times
pissed me off.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the times when you talk about the atmosphere, it makes me think that, I don't know, maybe the tone of the movie just wasn't for you.
Oh, absolutely not. I wouldn't even consider it like remotely for me. But I don't understand, like, how am I so fucking far off here? This is just such an unpleasant movie to watch. Which kind of brings me to my next point. When I'm saying, like, I just want it to be over, the tone, the blah, blah, the feeling you get in this fucking movie.
Yeah.
Sound design in this movie just pisses me the fuck off. Listening to it just makes you so fucking, like, irritated. The weird, like, electric ambient, headache-inducing noise that's constantly running through most of the movie is just so audibly unpleasant to listen to, let alone watch.
I mean, I hate to be an apologist for something that, once again, you see so little merit in, but I am 99% sure that that's the idea.
It's like intentionally trying to make you feel uncomfortable. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's doing that the entire time and so loudly and so distractingly, you can't sit and enjoy this movie, which might be the point. But that doesn't make for an enjoyable fucking experience. It's just fucking annoying.
See, to
listening
me, when
to the ambient things.
To me, when you point out something like the ambient noise or like the kind of high whinnying sound that occasionally makes its way into a lot of the scenes, to me, that perfectly undercuts the very kind of constantly contradictory things that Willard and Kurtz and even sometimes the, generalized members of the, skipper boat type thing are saying. Willard is a fucked up guy who got ruined by Vietnam, and now in a play of extreme military politics, he's being asked to kill someone who, had they not gone AWOL, would probably have been a general by the end of the Vietnam War. And he sometimes relates to this fucked up, weird guy who wants to kill all the natives. And that's fucked up. And sometimes he sees him as crazy. And sometimes, you know, like he goes through this whole range of emotions, all of which are uncomfortable, that show like human beings contain multitudes, and it's not comfortable discovering those multitudes. I mean, I'm going to return to the acid theme a lot during this episode, I am going to assume. But, like, it's like being on acid. You're like, holy shit, like, I relate to someone who does bad shit because they're a human being, and you have to have empathy for human beings. And I relate to ideas that I don't agree with because I understand where people are coming from. And I feel like it might have been overbearing for certain viewers, and I think you're definitely one of those viewers, but I think it like very well undercuts the themes of the movie and the themes of anti-war and the themes of military politics can be a little bit fucked up at times, type stuff. That, I mean, like I said, I'm going to defend a lot of stuff that you probably hate about this movie, and the sound design is going to be a big one of them. The beating of the helicopter wings in, you know, like with the audio slowed down, that keeps, you know, that happens in several of the scenes when there are no helicopters whatsoever. And, you know, the whinnying sound that you described, or kind of like that little guy, you know?
I wish I had a sound sample to pull. I will probably edit this podcast with like maybe an example of it. I don't want to be unfair.
No, feel free. Feel free.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I acknowledge that in my treatment, my kind of reverence for this movie is probably, I'm going to probably be a little bit unfair to you at times. So, I mean, feel free to play any cards that are not currently on the table in post-production. And keep all of this in because I don't care.
Okay. I just flipped to a random part in the movie and I hear it. Just like at a minute or an hour 15. Like,
yeah, it's that
like
really high-pitched kind of like...
Kind of, but not really. It's just like a constantly dissonant, like, sound that is not supposed to sound cohesive. The sound that it's trying to make. It's what they would call, like, you know, making it purposely dissonant, right?
Yeah.
And I get that. But when it's like 3.5 hours of just listening to purposefully dissonant sounds, it's just so unpleasant to listen to, let alone watch. Like, it's just... Yes, you're going for like this is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable to the point of fault for me. Just like it just gets irritating and annoying, and you just want it to be over with. Like, I would prefer silence over the audio design, and most of the times that it's used.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, it's just like headache inducing.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you have perhaps the movie in a format that you can pull?
I don't know.
Okay.
I've been trying to either rent or purchase all of our last few movies just so I can like kind of support the filmmakers. So I rented it on my cable box, and I just spent all my money paying the IRS, so I can't rent it again.
Say la vie indeed. I'm flipping through it again, an hour 29, when like the soldiers are like fondling the Playboy bunnies. There's just this horrible sound playing, like this kind of like cave noise ambience, and then like, yep, they're in a camp. Got more bullshit at like an hour 43. Oh my god! 2 hour 15. Just this pointless noise, and then this like the surfer guy just randomly screaming into the wind. like constantly.
The
It's
surfer
so
guy did
irritating.
acid, dude. Have you ever been around someone who's done acid?
No, I haven't.
This is the type of shit that will happen. That's why
I have no tolerance for this. It's so fucking trash to
this
watch.
is also a thing that happened during the Vietnam War. People did acid and mushrooms during this war while they were in combat. People had like psychotic breaks when they were doing stuff like this.
man. Sure. So this was
So
like
that's not, that guy doing that is not like, hey, do this
know how
thing and I'll
fucking
make it look
irritating
really
it is to watch
artistic and it's tight. I mean, it's not just
Oh my
that. It could be
God.
that, but it's not just that.
It's so fucking annoying. So,
Okay.
do you remember when we watched Jodorowsky's Dune?
Yes.
Jodorowsky's previous work were like so far out there and like beyond art house.
Yeah.
Just really psychedelic and really not making any sense,
And
right?
yet somehow
But perhaps the
beloved
one-
by the people who went to go see them.
Right.
Yeah.
It is for those type of people only.
Yeah.
This is the same style of art house where like it has that nonsensical, weird, crazy atmosphere. And while I love the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, I think I would have fucking hated those like 2 movies or his early works that they were trying to like say like
Oh, El Topo and the Holy Mountain. The
Yeah,
ones that got him famous, pretty much.
maybe not El Topo, maybe the one before that, the one that was like just like completely just visual bullshit.
The Holy Mountain.
Is that yeah? You can't.
Those
you
are the
just-
only 2 they discuss in the movie because those are the only 2 he had made at the time that he got to make Dune, I believe.
You could not understand what like half that shit meant unless you're like I don't know. It's just so out there, right?
Yeah.
This takes that same concept, but is also trying to make you feel as uncomfortable as possible the whole time
Sure.
in a very unapologetic way.
Yeah.
And the screaming, that horrible noise, just the headache that you get just watching this fucking thing. It's like, dude, good for you, Coppola. You nailed it by making me really hate this fucking everything that's happening, which is exactly what you were going for. But therefore, I fucking hate this movie. This movie is not for like. I generally don't consider myself general audience, but in this case, I consider myself highly general audience. As like, this is way too art house for me. This is beyond
Okay.
art house.
Okay.
I would not mind putting this on a list of if I ever had this in my house. It would be on my to burn list. You know what I mean? Like it's just such trash. I really would not want to subject anybody to having to sit through this piece of shit. I have a deep passion for how fucking much I hate this.
Oh, man.
But there's like, again, there was a lot of things about this movie that I like. But I fucking hate the shit in it so much. It's just such an unpleasant experience. And it's not
Oh,
unpleasant
man.
and like it really makes you like reflect or like think about the such and such of what he was going for, the horrors of war. It's just like it gives you a fucking migraine, an aneurysm.
I will say this.
Jesus Christ.
Referring to the last podcast we did, which this is an extension of, Anson and Paul Redux, as it were. This movie, to me, and this is a little bit of a harsh critique of Platoon, this movie, to me, accomplished with visual and sound the way a movie is fucking supposed to, what Charlie Sheen's dumb fucking voiceovers were meant to accomplish in Platoon.
Oh God, no. Like
Yep. To me,
I
that is
consider this,
entirely
like-
what this movie is.
this is like opposite ends of the spectrum here. Completely opposite ends. What would a middle ground for that kind of be? The Weatherman, maybe? Or like they have like that audio, that kind of like weird theme, that the audio playing in the back with like a little bit of talking over.
I would
right?
say someone who does audio really well that is I wouldn't say unrecognized for it, but who doesn't get enough credit for it is Christopher Nolan. Like Inception, the moments of silence are really powerful, and the moments of extreme noise are really powerful. Same with The Prestige. The moments of silence and the moments of voiceover and the moments of extreme noise are extremely kind of well crafted in a way that lends itself to the story. I agree there is like a happy medium where, everything serves the story really well.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with the Weatherman comparison.
Yeah.
Where it also is not unpleasant to listen to,
Sure.
but this movie just has so... And it's not necessarily the narrative that bothers me. It's everything
Because it's a
surrounding
very simple
the narrative.
You go deeper and deeper into the heart of darkness.
Yeah.
And what you find is the horror of a man who believes in total war.
So the length of the movie and the sound together combine to be a problem, because the longer they have like just all this extraneous bullshit, these unnecessary shots of like nonsensical spectacle, if you will, not only are a huge waste of time, but just perpetuate that already like annoyed feeling you get from just listening to the noise of the movie, both visually and audible noise. It's just so unpleasant. Just too much. It's just too much.
Sure.
I could even see this being cut down more. I might have enjoyed this if this was only 2 hours, not 3.
Oh, sure. I can see them making a very tight 2-hour movie out of this and losing no effect of the plot or themes or anything.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. I mean, I will level with you there. I think that's a very reasonable assertion about this movie.
That's where I would go with that. But what they choose to fill it with, that extra hour and a half, or even 2 hours, let's be honest, that is just not for me, to the point of revulsion.
Sure.
No. Some people don't like certain flavors. This, to me, hits that sour note.
Sure.
But like I said, I understand everything you say and your defense of it.
Yeah.
But it's just definitely not for me. To my next... Yeah, I guess I just went into a lot of pointless audio and visual bullshit. They spend so much time just, like, looking at random things in camps that don't make sense. Or just, like, when they're on the river, just, like, 15 minutes of just, like, nothing but that weird, like... just weird noises of head-pounding audio for no reason. Those are the main reasons why I really hate this movie.
Yeah. I guess for me, this is kind of the last thing I'm going to say about the noise and stuff, because I think we definitely have covered that, and you made a very good point about it, because it can go on for a little bit long when you think about it there. But one of the things that I would say is kind of my final defense of it is that it legitimately makes me feel like I'm going crazy. And then when we start to see Kurtz and hear his monologue, some of which I think might be some of the greatest improvised monologue in all of cinema, you don't know whether to agree with him or disagree with him, because some of the things he says at that point are so abhorrent that you can't help but have this gut reaction against them. But then some of the things he says are so agreeable that you're just, brought to your knees, I guess. I guess just to finish that sentence, those series of sounds and that kind of chaos and the audio-visual weird mixing that goes on makes me feel like I'm going crazy. And then by the time we're there with Kurtz, I'm like so conflicted about everything he says, because it's like, well, that was really fucked up, but it was also a good point. That was a good point, but what bearing does it have on the fucked up shit you're doing? Oh, that was really fucked up, but you might have some, so it's kind of like, even if this were a 2-hour movie, I would want that kind of audio craziness to be going on the whole time, because I think you need to feel a little bit crazy by the time you get to Kurtz, because Kurtz is insane. And some of the things he said are grounded, but he is definitely insane.
There's, I think I've brought this up before, an opera that we saw called Amelia that was playing in Washington.
Uh-huh.
And it was like supposed to be like, oh, a big deal because of the first time they had like Vietnamese in an opera. And we said, oh, that could be cool. It's new. We'll see what that's about. It's this fucking piece of trash opera. It's supposed to sound dissonant too.
Mm-hmm. It's
not supposed to sound melodic. It just sounds like fucking banging on a keyboard, and then they just made that into an opera.
Sure.
Like in the way that they sing in the sound. It's like an English opera is fucking horrible. And the Vietnamese people, like their whole part in it is just screaming. Right? It's not even singing. It's like, oh man, this is a huge fucking joke.
Sure.
Some people like that garbage sound of it not coming together, and it's very unpleasant to listen to. Some people like the deconstruction of what traditional music is, but it sounds like fucking trash. That's a definite fucking like intellectual.
Sounds like trash to you.
Yes, but that's like you have to like intellectually kind of like get into it.
Sure.
Because on a primal level, on a simple level, that music doesn't sound good because it's not supposed to sound good. So how can you subject yourself to sit through it unless you're trying to like overcome it mentally? That is just so not even work. That is just pointless amounts of pain to go through to just kind of like jack yourself off, I guess. I don't know. It's just like, oh, they did a really good job of not ever repeating the same note in like a fucking whatever in the same bar in like or 52 bars, like the same compositional structure, and it just sounds so bad, right?
Sure.
No one would want to actually listen to that in their free time. But then again, some people like metal music, and I like some metal music, but you like metal music, right?
Yeah, so let me give you this is a great opportunity for discussion.
Yeah.
So I've been playing music my whole life. I'm 26 years old. I started with piano when I was 3. I started to do things like drums and guitar when I was like 7 through 10. I've been listening to music my entire life, as have fucking all of us. But I understand how the vocals of metal can be grating to people. But also,
that's what I was going to say.
I've been listening to music for so long, and I learned Suzuki method piano, which is an ear training method, that I can literally tune out the vocals of a metal song. I can literally put on a metal song, have a guy screaming in my ear, and the only thing I can hear is and then so it's like, and like, have you seen 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Yeah, a long time ago.
So there's this thing in that movie you might not remember because not a lot of it's kind of an unsung hero of the movie. It's these compositions that employ this musical technique called micropolyphony, I guess is how you would say it. And it's basically these people, these opera singers, and I believe they're using violins as well, but it's like opera singers and violins like singing slightly off key with each other, and then like slowly shifting to a different form of off key, and then slowly shifting to a different form of off key. And they use it a lot during the scene where the main guy goes to Jupiter, and it makes everything sound so uncomfortable. It's like it makes your skin crawl. And I think this is just maybe for you a less successful attempt at something like that.
Perhaps.
Because if you think about it, Francis Ford Coppola, like, the best parts of his career pretty much ended with this movie, if I recall correctly. Let me just really quickly go to where it is on his IMDb page. Yeah, so before this movie, he had done The Godfather Part 2, The Conversation, and this. So this is quite possibly the last, and since then he has done fuck all except for, a bunch of stuff that, never sold really anywhere. So this is quite possibly like the last gasping breath of a true auteur getting the last bit of his, like really powerful creativity out of him. And I think if they maybe went too far with the sound design and it didn't work for you, it didn't work for you. I mean, that's, I have trouble, I guess. I have trouble not relating to what you're saying, because I definitely relate to what you're saying. But to me, it's like, because it serves this greater purpose, it's okay. And the feeling I have of negativity that I associate with maybe those sounds is okay.
I feel like a weird grandpa when I say, like for the metal example that I brought up.
Sure.
It's like, I like some metal. It's like saying, I like some black people, almost.
Not even close. I understand
that's
what you
the sense that I get. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
I'm like, okay, grandpa, okay, like... he's saying something way out there,
Yeah.
but he's trying in earnest to not be as fucking racist or bigoted as he is. That's what I feel like I sound like when I say shit like that. But yeah, definitely not to my taste, and I'll 100% put it that way. I guess to my last point, when you said like by the very end of the movie, all that crazy sound and what the crazy visuals you get, and just like the amount of time you spend just kind of like stewing with all this fucking bullshit. You want to feel crazy because you're confronted with the crazy Colonel Kurtz.
Sure.
Da 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 da. I feel like the ending was like pretty unrewarding. I liked Marlon Brando and the crazy stuff that he says.
Yeah.
I want to rewatch his ending scenes.
Those are like hauntingly beautiful to me.
Yeah. It's hard to think of a more captivating moment in a movie where that ending stands out so much to the rest of the movie that it's just so enjoyable and interesting to watch by that point. But the ending is just kind of a letdown.
Sure.
And then to the point where I say, really? All this for that? I sat through all this for that? Because for me, the journey was not worth the ending. And the ending also was... It's a vice versa thing.
Sure.
So maybe the ending sucks, but at least the movie ride itself was good. One could always argue. That's not the case for me. The movie ride was fucking horrible, and then the ending was a disappointment.
Sure.
So those two don't go together, and there's like, nothing redeems it. But I really like Brando's performance. I really like that build up when like Martin Sheen, kills him. It's cool. That build-up feels really interesting and like fun to watch.
And if we remember, they are using, I believe, the ending portion of the same song they began the movie with.
Which is?
That Doors song. This is the end, beautiful friend.
Oh, yeah. And then he's kind of like
pretty much the
bathed
same.
in blood.
I believe it's the end of that same song.
Yeah. And then he's thinking about all that fucking wacko shit that he saw in Vietnam. And then... I think Kurtz goes, the horror. And then it's over.
Yeah, and I love the speech, especially about becoming okay with the horror. That's kind of, far be it for me to explain how this movie came to be, but I have seen that documentary about the making of it. And Marlon Brando's character was meant to be skinny and gaunt.
Yeah, 30 pounds lighter.
Yeah, and he was massive. And so basically the way I understand it and the way the lore kind of goes is Francis Ford Coppola decided, we'll just shoot him in a really shadowy setting and just keep the camera rolling for, as long as the reel will roll, and then let him improvise what he understands to be the character. And in my mind, that part of the movie could not have turned out better. That was so fucking sweet.
Yeah.
It gives me this feeling of dread every time I watch it that I can't really describe.
See, because that was the cohesive part of the movie.
Yeah, that was one of the parts I would keep in wholesale.
There are distinct scenes in this movie that are very cohesive. The ending was very cohesive. The French aristocrat part was cohesive. The beginning intro scene was cohesive. Even with his like weird drugged out or when he's like doing drunken kung fu thingy in his bedroom and like punching the glass mirror and kind of going a little nuts.
Yeah.
That's cohesive, but so little else is.
Sure.
The line between each and every one. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. All the scenes with that guy,
Robert
Duvall's character, were cohesive.
Yeah, and in fact, I really liked. I thought there was this almost hilarious kind of irony to that character.
Oh, definitely, because he's trying so hard to make regular life for these soldiers in Vietnam to the point of like just completely fucking shit up and going crazy.
Yeah. To
the point where he's alien trying to be normal.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I really thought it was cool. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing you don't see so much, right? So much of this movie just built on its spectacle. The spectacle can make sense
Yeah.
with the narrative, but when there's like literally no narrative reason for so much of this shit to happen, it's just pointless.
That's actually, it's funny you mentioned that word spectacle. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in the last time we tried to record this, or sorry, the first part of this podcast, is like the first time I ever saw this movie, I remember just thinking to myself, this is a spectacle of the truest form. This is what the definition of spectacle is.
Yeah. You no longer feel that way?
Well, I guess I'm using that more just to relate to your feeling that like some of the movie is useless spectacle. My feeling the first time I saw it was like, oh, this is what a spectacle is. Meaning like in my mind, like a spectacle is something that is awesome and terrible and fantastic and wonderful and interesting, and I understand it and I don't understand any of it, and this makes so much sense and this makes no sense at all. And so like that's what I thought the first time, like, oh, like, yeah, that's what a spectacle is. And now, you know, I more relate to what you're saying, which is like parts of this that don't serve a narrative purpose are just in order to provide a spectacle.
Yeah.
Which is a completely, I totally understand that point. It's a completely valid point.
Well, there you go. I mean, like, those are just my biggest problems with the movie, is just lack of cohesion, and so much of it should have just been cut out, I feel like.
Yeah.
You can keep some of, like, if it was used to greater effect, rather than overwhelming with so much of it that, like, you're supposed to build up that feeling.
Yeah.
But if you're seeing this for, like, you know, if you're going to the circus to see the freaks, then you're going to the circus to see the freaks.
And that's kind of, I mean, if you want to really, really boil down my attitude about this film, that's kind of the way I feel, is like something, I cannot say what it is, but something about this movie affects me on such a visceral level the entire fucking time that watching it is like watching an old-timey 60s to 80s Stanley Kubrick movie, where it's like, I'm just watching this to see how fucked up shit could get because it affects me so viscerally. From the moment that Doors song starts playing in the beginning and the bomb explodes and you hear Jim Morrison's voice go, "This is the end." From that moment on, I can't do anything else while I watch this movie because it's so weird and fantastic and interesting and unintelligible at times, I will admit. But something about it connects with me. The way I describe it is like it affects me for weeks afterwards. Like I watched this twice for our podcast a couple days ago, and I've been in this weird kind of peaceful headspace ever since. It's like watching this movie to me is like listening to a piece of music that gives you chills, but you can't describe why it gives you chills, and sometimes it makes you angry. If that makes sense.
Man, this really does boil down to taste. Because from what you describe, that's a beautiful feeling that you get from this movie that is just entirely lost on me. Right? And we watched the exact same fucking movie.
Yeah.
But we had completely different experiences with it. So, hearing you say that makes me a little sad that I don't feel the same way.
But I bet there are a billion movies that you feel that way about that I couldn't care less about.
No, exactly. That's totally true. This just boils down to taste.
Yeah,
because
it must have to.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I will confess, I did a little bit of research before we started this kind of Redux episode, this Blitz episode, and I kind of reread some parts of Heart of Darkness, and Heart of Darkness is kind of a simple story. It's basically just imperialism is bad, and here's all the ways it gives people power trips and hurts people's lives and stuff like that. And, you know, people are human beings. And then this movie takes that concept, applies it to, you know, one of the most controversial conflicts in recent history, and then just like jizzes all over it with this, mushroom acid aesthetic, 60s psychedelic, weird, no clue what's going on type of thing. And so because of that, like the themes of the book are obviously there and they go in certain directions at certain times, but it is just like you could have made this movie a million different ways with the same themes and the same plot, same actors, and it could have come out a million different ways. I bet Stanley Kubrick would have made this movie very differently, as would have Steven Spielberg or David Fincher, or, you've got to be right in that assertion that it's just taste.
Kubrick could have done something very similar if you compare this like a Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
I feel like his way of showing quote unquote horror visually, even like audibly and psychologically, is very palpable, like super palpable. You walk away from Clockwork Orange feeling so uncomfortable. In my opinion,
God.
Clockwork Orange, Clockwork Orange feels much better for making you feel really bad about something than this movie does. But what you're telling me is there are chills you get watching this movie for some reason. Like that are hard to describe.
I can't describe why.
I could describe why I am fascinated by Clockwork Orange and am so captivated watching that in a disgusting, perverse way, which is what that movie goes for.
Yeah.
I want this movie to be like a Clockwork Orange almost. I know what its message is by the end, is it's trying to leave you with that kind of like, that feeling of disgust.
Yeah.
I might be missing it entirely. I could very well be, because I'm looking at the IMDb page and I see a Clockwork Orange in the very front, and I'm like, maybe it's kind of like painting my feeling towards it.
Maybe.
But I feel like that's a better example of something that can fuck with you psychologically, that can give you that sort of feeling without being overbearing to the point of annoying.
Yeah.
But then again, they're both trying to do something very different.
Sure.
But at the same time, I feel that could be applied to this movie in its approach, which is why we said Kubrick would have had a very different take. It could have been similar. Yeah, I think it would have lost a lot of what you find charm.
Yeah.
In what this currently has. Would you consider it charm? I don't know how you describe that.
I don't know for that I would. The word I would use to describe it would be allure.
Yeah, that's a much better word.
It's this thing that contains the multitudes of the human experience. It has sex almost to the point of that, like, primal, these guys haven't seen a fuckable woman in months and they're dying to get off type of, like, caveman sex vibe. It has violence. It has the visceral, I'm taking out my anger on you violence. It has the I'm protecting something that doesn't need to be protected violence when Lawrence Fishburne guns down that woman in the boat. It has the very calculated, practiced violence of Martin Sheen taking out Marlon Brando. It has terror at, what's going on. It contains the multitudes of the human experience, sometimes in their extremes, but never fully explores any of them, and so is alluring because you get to see these parts of yourself that you're uncomfortable with, but that make sense if you're in the right headspace, if that makes sense. That's why it has allure, is because it has all this shit. Like, it has the sex I mentioned, it has the violence I mentioned, it has the terror of war, it has the sadness of knowing what excitement feels like and then going back to a regular life and noticing that that's completely gone. It has, I could go on and on and on with all of the bits of life that this movie has in it, but to me that's what makes it alluring, is that it doesn't really fully explain most of those things that it has in it, but it touches on a lot of them in a way that kind of like teases you, I guess.
It might be like something you've seen in a dream. Like when you wake up, you kind of vaguely remember that feel. You remember the feeling, a very strong feeling, but you don't remember exactly what the fuck you saw.
Exactly.
Or what the fuck was exactly in it.
And there's something that I said earlier that I don't want to, God forbid
I'd
my
agree to that to an
future
extent.
military career be at stake
Military
here,
career.
but
What?
it is very much like taking a hallucinogenic drug. There are these massive ups, these massive downs, these massive jumps in every direction because everything you're doing when you're on a hallucinogenic drug is the most interesting thing you've ever done ever. And then the second you move on to the next thing, that thing you were just doing is not anymore. It's like, this movie is like an acid trip.
See, I wrestle with this because I get what you're saying, but when you think about like an acid dropping hippie who's like rambling on and on and on about society, man, but like not really making a whole lot of sense, but just like a rambling
Dennis Hopper's character. pretty
crazily,
much.
just theoretically,
Oh,
right?
okay.
This is what that movie is then. Because if it's trying to say all these things but it's just rambling on and on and on incohesively, that's kind of what comes across in this movie. But perhaps the one on acid could understand if they have like a similar experience or feeling,
Yeah.
while they both don't understand how to communicate that
Yeah.
properly or in a real way, right?
Yeah.
Where you're trying to like piece together those ramblings to form that feeling that ultimately you might go, yeah, man, groovy. Fine. That's cool in a way, theoretically, but I'm not in that telepathy. I'm not in that
Sure.
space, and so I don't get it.
And I mean, I'm going to mention this again, and far be it for us to record for too much longer, seeing as how this is a Blitz edition, but,
Yeah, get that out of your head. This is not a Blitz anymore.
yeah, no, not at all. If you watch Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about the making of this movie, and like I said, I've spent a lot of time around people who have done hallucinogenic drugs. It legitimately sounds every time Francis Ford Coppola talks like he is on acid. He's rambling incoherently. He's talking about logistics and plot at the same time, which is, something you want to try not to... I mean, it's something you want to focus on when you're on set as a director, but it's not something you want to take time off of your focus time to ramble to a camera about. And it legitimately seems like he's going crazy. Like, a lot of times when people are on acid and you let them talk for long enough and don't, participate in the conversation, the more they talk, the crazier they're going to seem. And he seems like that in the footage of the making of this movie. He seems like he's gone fucking crazy. And so what you said might have an added bit of credence because of that, I guess, is what I'm saying.
God, this movie. I really wrestle with it because I really like some things about it. I even like this idea, but fuck, is it just horrible for me to watch?
Yeah.
God, like, it's torture.
If it doesn't click with you, it doesn't click with you. And if that isn't the most acidy thought of all time, I don't know what is.
That's not acidy.
No, it is. It's like you're hanging out with your friends, you're tripping, and you're like, hey, I'm going to go watch this, piece of YouTube media, or I'm going to go, play with the cat or something. And they're like, well, fucking A, man, if that's not, what I want to do, I'm not going to do it. But hey, if that's for you, that's for you.
It's just that I'm so bothered by the fact that there's so much in this movie that I like, but there's more in this movie that I just absolutely hate. And for you, the things that I hate are things that you love. And it's such a weird...
It's not that I love them, it's that I've rationalized myself into being enamored with them. Like, if you give me a movie like this with even a quarter of the monologues that I love taken out, maybe it completely loses all its resonance with me, and I think it's a piece of shit. So I'm not saying that. It's just there's something about I can't say what it is. I'm just saying I totally understand where you're coming from.
It's weird because I don't normally feel this way with movies I don't like. Where I'm usually very quick and I don't give a shit. I call it what I think is trash.
Sure.
Right. I can't call this that.
Yeah.
It's almost like I wrestle with the fond memory of parts of the movie with knowing the experience of absolutely hating the entire sitting experience.
The whole, yeah.
Rounded up to the point where it is definitely the whole, right? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's what bothers me so, I think, is that it's hard for me to put my flag down, but I have to, because I cannot recommend the movie, as we never actually got to that. I do not recommend this movie. And there are things about it that I like to think about. There are things about it that I might look back fondly on, you know? But my God, do I hate this thing, this shit. I think that's what really bothers me, is I can't find a place for it mentally. Maybe I can't rationalize it intellectually. That's the problem, like you said. You can rationalize the parts where I say I hate.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm fully open to the idea that it is possibly just my rationalizing of something that is truly insufferable, but to me, in the moment, at least, it feels like...
Can't be, man. Like, the scores, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and all those other shit, like...
But that's the thing is that, like,
consensus is agreed.
That's the thing is I just philosophically, I can't bring myself to defer to the quote unquote authority of a critic in order to rationalize my belief. But I did do that earlier. So, you know, fair game and everything. But I can't quite tell what it is. There's something about this movie that really gets me. And I probably wouldn't recommend this movie either, unfortunately, but it is a very affecting movie.
Really? You wouldn't recommend this movie?
Probably not. I mean, you're the third person I've recommended it to, and I'm 3 for 3 with people who recommended it to hating it. So, I mean, I don't think I could recommend this movie anymore. It's not like There Will Be Blood where I can beat people over the head with the themes and the acting and the perfect cinematography and the writing being so on point and every character being perfect. You know, like, I can't beat people over the head with this being a perfect movie. It's just personally affecting. And obviously, as my experience has shown, other people don't share that sentiment. So, you know.
We've also talked about our tastes in the past, too.
Yeah.
Where I rely heavily on, like, narrative and character.
Yeah, and this is kind of one of the reasons I wanted to get into making movies, is that I rely on how the combo of image and sound make you feel. And sometimes a movie's plot or inconsistent plot will kind of make me think it's trash, but typically the things that will make me think a movie is trash is technical laziness and like going through the motions, which I mean, that's part of the big reason why I didn't like Platoon that much, was because I looked at Oliver Stone's other movies and I was like, oh, Any Given Sunday, that was like this weird Oscar bait trying to be profound football movie, and Natural Born Killers was this weird Oscar bait trying to be an art house thriller that was just, you know, didn't work for me. Every movie of his is a movie that goes through the motions of this being a movie, but has absolutely no heart in it for the most part. And this is my read of his movies. This is not the way his movies are. This is just my interpretation. But like, I saw Savages in the theater and I was like, what direction did he give these actors? Look cool smoking pot and I'll shoot you for an hour and a half and get a dozen different angles and we'll call it a day. You know, like, his movies don't have heart, and so I'm so not willing to give him the benefit of the doubt when Platoon does have heart and Wall Street does have heart. Whereas, like, Francis Ford Coppola, it's probably another, you know, sense of personal bias. Like The Godfather Part 2, The Conversation. Like, I'm ready to go wherever the person who made those 3 movies is going to take me. And if that's this rambling, crazy, wacky movie about, you know, this simple plot that gets, you know, mixed up in a dozen different tangents, I'll go there. So it has a lot to do with context. It has a lot to do with the technical aspects, and this movie is technically very brilliant, both from that sound mixing thing that you dislike and the, you know, how they shot Marlon Brando to be this kind of hulking, shadowy giant how they shot almost all of the violence in this movie was gorgeous. So, like, it's, for me, it's technicality. For you, it's the plot devices and the, what else was it you said? Like, the cohesiveness of the story and stuff like that. I'm more forgiving on that point as long as the technicality is there.
Another thing about this is what lends itself to, like, narrative and all the other movies that I like. I bring up a lot. I say I like the pacing of a movie.
Yeah.
This had no pace. There was no pace to this.
Yeah, it was 1 second it was rapid fire, the next second it was dead for 20 minutes.
20, fuck. And then it was just crazy for another 20.
Sure,
And then something regular happens, and, like, there's no pace to this.
Sure.
This just has no cohesion.
Sure, yeah.
It just does not feel right. Which, and you can say he's going for that, fine. But, yeah, for the reasons why I like a movie, it does not hit it.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's a lot of technical things that I really like. I like...
Execution is tough.
Yeah. I resent the fact that you try to say, the guy who did The Godfather 1 and 2, take me on your journey, man. I fucking get that. But, man, this ain't The Godfather 1. This ain't The Godfather fucking 2. This ain't even The Godfather fucking 3. This is nothing like that, right? Like,
Don't you
I
dare
could not even,
compare this to The Godfather 3.
I'm not going to, but I will say that this could have, like, been a completely different director to the one who did The Godfather 1, 2, and 3. You know what I mean? This was something else. This is something that came up out of, like, a weird dream. Because The Godfathers, all three of them, even if you do include the third one, like, have a formal structure.
Yep.
Characters, a relatability, an emotional impact. I don't get an emotional impact from this fucking movie. Except for the very ending, perhaps. But The Godfather 1, 2, not so much 3. They carry you along, man. This doesn't carry you.
Yeah.
I guess that's what the whole device of the fucking boat going down the river, man. You just gotta go along for the ride sometimes.
Well, that's another
and get
part that was
accosted
kind of
by
taken from Heart of
natives.
Darkness, which is just like you need a vessel to take you deeper into the Heart of Darkness.
I guess symbolically the vessel's LSD. And I was not on that boat.
Fair enough. So I guess we've already mentioned it, but just for the sake of, as we just described, a structure, Anson, would you recommend this flick to someone else?
Nope. I actually recommended this to someone to watch too. Because I told them I was going to be watching this. They watched it. They hated it as much as I did. And that was without any, what's the word?
Context.
Yeah, without my influence. So just watch it.
Sure.
And like, dude, what the fuck? And I'm like, haha, haha.
Sure.
No, I would not. Paul, what about you?
I have tried and failed to get people interested in this movie, so as a result, I would not recommend this one.
All right. Well, for our Redux episode, that was supposed to be a Blitz, which turned into a Heart of Darkness. I have been Anson Chan.
And I've been Paul Morgan.
Thank you all for listening, and the horror.
The horror.
You see anything, Sheriff? Why don't they fucking attack, man?